At Thanksgiving dinner, my parents accused me of stealing Grandma's inheritance. I stayed quiet, but that night the truth I'd been keeping would make everyone at the table freeze. The smell of roasted turkey and cinnamon candles filled the room as silverware clinked against porcelain. Laughter rolled across the table, but none of it reached me. My name is Heather, 31, the oldest child who had spent Sundays with Grandma when no one else bothered. I had walked into this house with a small hope tucked inside that maybe tonight would be different, that maybe they'd see me as more than the quiet helper. Instead, I found my seat at the far end of the table near the kitchen door, a chair that wobbled when I sat. Before I tell you what happened next, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. And if you've ever been accused of something you didn't do by family, hit subscribe. You'll want to see where this goes. I set down the pumpkin pie I'd baked using Grandma's recipe, the one she said always smelled like home. Nobody looked up. My mother introduced every dish by name. The turkey Dad carved, the casserole Aunt Marie brought, the rolls my cousin bought at the store, but she skipped over mine like it wasn't there. My fork hovered in midair as I watched her smile at everyone else. Across the table, my younger brother talked about his new job, his voice filling the space. My father poured wine for the guests, reaching past me without a glance. Someone cracked a joke about cheap desserts, and a soft ripple of laughter followed, the kind that pricks your skin. I straightened my dress, the one Grandma liked, because of the little sunflowers on the hem. On the sideboard, Grandma's old camera sat like a forgotten trinket, its lens pointing at the room. Months ago, she'd asked me how to upload videos to the cloud. Nobody else had cared. The camera's tiny red light flickered once, then held steady, a heartbeat only I seemed to notice. I pushed my plate back an inch, my fingers brushing the cool tablecloth. Across from me, my mother leaned in to whisper something to my father. Their eyes cut toward me, and then away. The smell of sage stuffing mixed with the faint scent of candle wax and dish soap. It should have felt warm, but the air pressed down like a storm about to break. I stayed still, letting the noise wash over me. The clatter of knives, the rise and fall of voices, the scraping of chairs, all of it faded until I could hear the clock in the hall ticking. My hand drifted toward the pie, then stopped. No one had touched it. From my corner, I watched their faces in the glow of the chandelier. My father's jaw tight as he carved my mother's eyes, darting my cousin's smirk. It was a portrait of a family I barely recognized, framed by the holiday we were supposed to share. I folded my napkin slowly, tucking it into my lap. My heart beat steady, not fast. The camera blinked again. In that moment, I knew the night wasn't going to end the way they thought. A chair scraped and someone asked for more wine. I lifted my glass, met no one's eyes, and took a sip. The taste of cinnamon clung to the back of my throat. They didn't see me watching them. They didn't know I'd been paying attention. And as the conversation turned from football scores to family money like a gust of cold air, I felt the room tilt. Somewhere deep inside, the truth waited silent and sharp, ready to surface. I kept my smile small, the kind you wear when you've stopped expecting an apology. In the glow of the candles, I reached for my fork and heard a fork fall at the far end of the table, the clang ringing louder than it should. Everyone glanced up, then went back to their plates. No one noticed the man in a dark suit standing quietly just beyond the doorway. Not yet. I placed my hands flat on the tablecloth. The fabric felt like ice. The camera's lens glinted once more. The night was still pretending to be normal, but the edges were already cracking. I breathed in the scent of roasted turkey and Grandma's pie and let it settle. Sometimes silence is heavier than words. Tonight it would have to be. The chatter at the table grew louder as platters were passed, but it rolled around me like water around a stone. I kept my eyes on my plate, moving a piece of turkey from one side to the other. From my seat near the kitchen door, I could see everyone framed by the warm glow of the chandelier, my father at the head, my mother leaning in close to whisper, my brother laughing with a cousin. They looked like a family from a holiday commercial, but I sat just outside the picture. I traced the edge of my napkin, feeling the soft fabric against my fingertips. Across the room, Grandma's old camera still perched on the sideboard. No one else noticed its steady red light. Months ago, she'd asked me to show her how to save videos, how to make sure memories couldn't be erased. I'd thought she meant photos of birthdays and recipes. Now it felt like a quiet promise hanging in the air. Someone reached for the bread basket and knocked my fork onto the floor. It clattered against the hardwood, a small sound that cut through the noise. I bent to pick it up, catching a glimpse of the dark-suited figure still waiting in the hallway. His outline was reflected in the glass of the china cabinet like a shadow of something inevitable. I straightened slowly, my movements unhurried. The smell of stuffing and cranberry sauce had turned heavy, sweet, and cloying. I pushed my pie a little closer to the center of the table, but no one reached for it. My mother was telling a story about my brother's promotion. My father raised his glass and praised his hard work without looking my way. A small laugh rippled around the table, polite and rehearsed. I sat back, letting the noise fade into a low hum. My heartbeat stayed steady. The clock in the hall ticked a metronome, counting down to something they couldn't see coming. I glanced once more at the camera's glinting lens and then at the doorway. The man in the suit shifted his weight, waiting. I folded my hands, feeling the cool tablecloth beneath my palms. This was still just dinner, still just another holiday. But underneath, something was about to change. I stayed quiet, letting my silence speak for me. The conversation drifted from holiday pleasantries to money like a cold draft sneaking under the door. My father's voice cut through the hum of chatter. "Funny how things go missing when someone's always around," he said, eyes fixed on the turkey but angled toward me. A few forks paused midair. My mother dabbed at her lips with a napkin, then added lightly, "Heather, maybe you can explain where Grandma's jewelry went." Her tone was polite but sharp enough to slice. I kept my eyes on my plate, tracing the edge with my knife. Across from me, my cousin raised her brows and whispered something to her husband. The sound of it, a hiss of speculation, drifted back to me. My brother looked at me uneasy, but said nothing. Aunt Marie leaned forward, voice pitched just loud enough to carry. "I heard you've been visiting that pawn shop downtown." The room shifted. Chairs creaked, glasses clicked. Someone muttered, "She had keys, didn't she?" Another voice agreed, "Always alone with Grandma." My mother placed her fork down with a deliberate clink. "This is your chance, Heather. Tell everyone what you've been doing." Her smile didn't reach her eyes. My father leaned back, folding his arms, a judge awaiting a plea. I straightened my napkin, feeling the texture between my fingers. The chandelier's light flickered over polished silver over faces that had once felt like home. The air thickened with stuffing and accusation. "Speak up," my father said louder now. "You stole Grandma's inheritance. We all know it." His words hung in the air like smoke curling into every corner. My cousin gasped softly. Someone else whispered, "It makes sense." I didn't answer. The old camera's lens glinted once from the sideboard, steady and small. In the doorway, the man in the dark suit shifted his stance, unseen by everyone but me. I lifted my water glass, took a slow sip, and set it down without a sound. My brother's chair squeaked as he shifted, glancing from me to our parents, his paint-stained fingers gripping the edge of the table. The warmth of the holiday had cooled into a courtroom chill. No one noticed my calm. They only saw a woman cornered. They didn't see the edges of the storm about to break. My father's chair scraped against the hardwood as he stood looming over the table. "You think we don't notice?" he said, his voice heavy. "Grandma's things started disappearing the moment you had keys to her house." The silver knife in his hand trembled slightly before he set it down. My mother crossed her arms, her napkin falling unnoticed to the floor. I felt every eye on me. My cousin leaned back, smirking, and whispered to Aunt Marie. She tilted her head, watching me the way someone watches a car accident they can't stop. I heard she said louder that Heather sold a necklace for cash. 8,000, wasn't it? Murmurs rose like a tide. My brother shifted, his face pale. "She wouldn't," he said softly, but it sounded uncertain. My father seized on it. "Wouldn't she? She was always there, always alone with Grandma. She had every opportunity." A glass tipped, spilling wine across the tablecloth like a slow red bloom. No one moved to clean it. I smoothed my dress and kept my breathing steady. The air had changed. The warmth of roasted turkey and sweet potatoes now smelled like iron. My mother's pearls caught the light, her fingers tight around them as she stared. "This is a holiday, Heather," she said. "You could at least be honest." A chair squealed as someone turned to get a better view. From the sideboard, Grandma's old camera watched silently, its little red eye steady. In the hallway, the dark-suited man shifted his laptop from one hand to the other. His presence was a quiet weight no one sensed but me. I lowered my eyes to my untouched pie, the crust flaking under my fork. My brother's hand hovered above the table, then dropped. Across from me, my father's voice boomed one last time, "You stole Grandma's inheritance. Admit it." I didn't. I simply reached for my glass again, fingers steady, and took a slow drink. The chandelier flickered shadows lengthening across their faces. They thought my silence was guilt. They didn't see it was a fuse burning down. The man in the hallway stepped forward at last, his laptop under one arm. The chatter dropped to a hush, forks hanging in midair. He set the device at the head of the table where Grandma's chair once stood. "I'm Mr. Brennan," he said evenly. "Your grandmother asked me to be here." My father blinked, thrown off balance for the first time all night. Without another word, Mr. Brennan opened the laptop. The glow of the screen lit up his glasses, and then the dining room fell into a heavier silence. He clicked on a folder labeled Evidence. Each file had dates and times. My mother stiffened her pearls, clicking faintly as she moved. "This is ridiculous," she whispered, but her voice had lost its edge. Mr. Brennan spoke calmly, as if reading a grocery list. "Mrs. Chen installed a security system connected to cloud storage. Every clip uploads automatically. She asked Heather here." He glanced at me to help her set it up. My cousin's smirk vanished. My father shifted the chair, creaking under his weight. On the screen, the first video loaded. Grandma's living room appeared bright even in the winter light. The timestamp in the corner read months earlier. We watched Veronica, my cousin, walk through the front door, using a key stride upstairs, and open Grandma's jewelry box with practiced ease. The room gasped as one. Aunt Marie's hand flew to her mouth. Veronica's voice cracked. "Grandma gave me permission." Her words sounded brittle. Mr. Brennan said nothing, simply cued another clip. This time, the pawn shop, the same purse, the pearl necklace exchanged for cash. Receipts slid into view under the camera's eye. Uncle Robert's face drained of color. My father opened his mouth, but Mr. Brennan raised a hand. "There's more." The third video showed the kitchen, Uncle Robert and Veronica whispering over cookies about planting rumors of theft on me. The sound came through clear. "By the time the will is read, everyone will believe Heather's been stealing." The entire table stared, breaths held. My mother's knuckles whitened around her napkin. My brother exhaled a slow, shaky breath. The turkey smell was gone. Only the cold scent of truth filled the room now. I sat very still, my heart steady. This was no speech, no defense. This was the quiet moment where the floor tilted and all the weight rolled off my shoulders onto theirs. Mr. Brennan closed the last clip and pulled a single sheet of paper from a slim envelope. "Your grandmother's words," he said, his tone still steady. The paper trembled slightly as he held it up, but not from his hand. Everyone leaned in as if drawn by a magnet. On the screen, a new video appeared, Grandma herself in her favorite chair by the window, eyes sharp and voice clear. "If you're watching this," she began, "then I'm gone and the truth has surfaced." She spoke of Veronica and Robert by name, of stolen items, of lies spun to ruin my reputation. She paused, then looked straight into the lens. "Heather, you helped me more than you know. You showed up every Sunday not for an inheritance but for love." The room stayed frozen. Even the fireplace seemed to quiet its crackle. Grandma's smile flickered on the screen, that mischievous grin she wore when beating everyone at cards. "The house, the money, everything goes to Heather. She knows what to do with it." The words landed like stones dropped in water. Ripples moved through the table. My father shifted again but said nothing. Veronica's chair screeched as she stood up. "This is entrapment. I want a lawyer." Mr. Brennan's gaze lifted to her. "Detective Morrison is outside. You can either return the stolen items or he'll escort you to the station." Veronica's mouth opened, then shut. She sat back down, her jaw tight. Uncle Robert stared at the floor. I stayed seated, my hands folded in my lap. No victory smile, no gloating. Just quiet breathing as the storm they'd built collapsed over their heads. Around us, the holiday decorations, golden leaves, small candles looked strangely out of place, like props left on stage after the play had ended. My mother's eyes met mine for the first time all evening. Something in her expression softened a tremor of shame, maybe even pride. Mr. Brennan lowered the paper. Mrs. Chen's instructions for restitution will follow. For now, consider this your chance to make amends. The air felt heavy but different. Not the weight of accusation anymore, something lighter, closer to release. I took a sip of water and set the glass down slowly. The clink echoed. No one spoke. The reckoning had arrived without a raised voice, only evidence and a camera's quiet eye. Detective Morrison entered quietly, as if he'd been listening all along. His presence filled the doorway, but he didn't speak, just nodded to Mr. Brennan. Veronica's eyes darted toward him, her shoulders caving slightly. Uncle Robert rubbed his forehead, the napkin in his hand shredding to bits. I stayed seated, hands still, the cool wood of Grandma's table beneath my fingertips. The turkey sat untouched, candles dripping wax like slow tears. Mr. Brennan explained the restitution plan with the same measured tone. Veronica had 30 days to return the full amount plus interest. Robert forfeited his share entirely, the clocks and cash added to my inheritance. Any beneficiary who steals or conspires forfeits their rights, he read, and must work toward restitution. No one argued. Even my father, who had been loudest earlier, kept his eyes on his plate. My mother finally broke the silence. Her voice shook, but it carried. "You tried to ruin your own niece," she said, looking at Robert. "How could you?" He muttered something about desperation, but it sounded small, unconvincing. Aunt Marie shifted her chair back from him, as if distance could scrub away the shame. I stood up slowly. The scrape of my chair echoed through the room. "Grandma wanted this to stop here," I said quietly. "Not drag on." My words weren't a victory speech, just a fact, the way Grandma would have said it. Mr. Brennan handed me a sealed envelope. My name in Grandma's handwriting curled across the front. I opened it with careful fingers. Inside, her message unfolded like a soft voice. "By now, the wolves have shown their teeth. Don't let their betrayal harden you. The house is yours, the recipes, the seed money for your community center, all yours. Turn it into something beautiful." The ink wavered where her hand had trembled, but the words felt steady. I looked around the table. Some eyes avoided mine, others flickered with regret. The sound of the front door opening came from the hall as Detective Morrison stepped back outside, waiting. Veronica's hands were clenched in her lap. Robert stared at the wall, lips pressed tight. I folded the letter back into its envelope. My pulse was calm, a steady drumbeat under the skin. The holiday decorations still glittered faintly, but the room itself felt stripped bare of illusions. 6 months later, the Victorian house no longer smelled like dust and silence. It buzzed with children's voices, the walls bright with murals of birds and books. The living room where the accusations flew had become a reading corner, filled with beanbags and donated stories. The kitchen where Robert and Veronica had whispered their plans now held long tables, flour-dusted counters, and the scent of cinnamon rolls every Thursday. Grandma's recipes, once folded in a tin box, were taped up along the backsplash for anyone to use. Veronica arrived on time for her volunteer shift, hair tied back, apron on. She wiped counters, taught kids to measure sugar, answered their shy questions. She'd lost her license after the IRS investigation and now worked part-time at the same pawn shop where she'd sold Grandma's jewelry. Robert's dealership had closed. He fixed engines now at a small garage across town. Honest work, but he hadn't spoken to me since that day. Wesley painted a mural of Grandma on the house's side wall, her mischievous smile, angel wings, a small hidden camera in her hand. Mom helped me run art and music classes, her quiet strength a steady anchor. Every Thursday afternoon, I carried a box of cinnamon rolls to the cemetery, sat by Grandma's headstone, and told her about the children learning to bake, or the families finding a safe place here. Sometimes in the breeze, I thought I heard her laugh, especially when I mentioned Detective Morrison had asked Veronica out on a date without knowing her history. Grandma always said truth floats to the surface, and that karma has a sense of humor. Standing at her grave, I understood. She hadn't just left me money or property, she'd left me clarity, a reputation intact, and a living legacy. "Technology is wonderful, dear," she'd said once, "but wisdom is better. I'd thought she meant computers. She meant life. I brushed a crumb of cinnamon from the stone and smiled. I walked back toward the center's warm windows, the sound of children spilling into the night. As the door closed softly behind me, the echo of laughter from the children drifted into the cool night. In that quiet, I felt the weight of everything lifted, replaced by a calm strength. Sometimes the truest justice isn't loud or fast, it's steady, patient, and undeniable, revealing who we really are without a single raised voice.